Let's now do version number 1 of the implementation of BirthdayBook using an array list. The assumption is you have already learned about the basic usage of the array list in your lecture. However, I'm going to include a link of the relevant lecture in the information section for this video. And there's another tutorial video which we recorded in the previous year, which I will also highly recommend you actually take a look. Okay, so let me show to you over here. So this is the tutorial video about Java collections, and that one there, that playlist only contains 2 videos. The first one is about array list, which will be relevant for the current video, and then for the next video, we are going to talk about the second implementation using hash map or hash table. That's something you can also look at as well. I'll remind you about this list in the next video too. Alright, so it's really recommended that before you actually start going over the solution with me in the tutorial for BirthdayBook, you should at least go over the relevant section in your lecture and also this extra tutorial, if possible, about array list. Alright, let's now go back to version number 1. So let me double click on that. We already talked about the Junit Test in the previous video, so I'm not going to review that. We're just going to see if we'll pass all the test cases, all the assertions in that case. Alright, so we already got birthday over here. Why don't we finish the implementation for birthday first, and then I'm going to introduce another new class in the case of the array list implementation, version number 1. Okay, for birthday, it's going to be very easy. So we want all the attributes to be private. So we can say private, let's say month, and also private and day. So these are the 2 attributes we want. And then here we can say this month is assigned to month. And also this day is assigned to day over here. Right, so that's the constructor. Oh, by the way, I need to put in the types for sure. So integer and also integer. And the assumption is whenever you're creating a new instance of birthday, you always pass the valid values for the month and day, and also always the valid combination. For example, you wouldn't put, for example, 12 and then 32. It's not going to happen, right? Of course, you can definitely extend this class by some error checking as some exercise on your own. Okay, if you can feel free. All right, so for the get month, straightforward dot return this dot month, and also get day will be return this dot day. All right, so we are done for the birthday class. I want to introduce another class. Okay, so later on when we actually talk about the second implementation, version number 2, using hash table, so the idea about entry will be quite straightforward, quite convenient in the case of a hash table. However, in the case of a version number 1 using array list, we might just want to create our own BirthdayBook entry class over here. I'm gonna draw the connection a little bit later. So the class I'm going to create right now is only relevant to version number 1. For version number 2, the concept, the notion about entry is kind of automatic if you want to use hash table. Okay, let me now right click on the model package and then create a new class. Let's call that BirthdayBook entry. And each entry is defined to contain the name and also the birthday for a particular person. Okay, and then let me say finish over here. And for BirthdayBook entry, I'm just going to contain the 2 pieces of information I just spoke about, the name and also the birthday. So I can say private string and then the name, and also private birthday, and then here let's say BD, for example, right? I can say birthday, maybe just spell it fully. Okay, so these are the 2 pieces of information that will be stored in each BirthdayBook entry objects. Okay, let's now just try to get maybe the constructor and also accessor mutator. Let's do that. So we can say public BirthdayBook entry, so that'll be the constructor. Okay, and we can simply say every time when you want to initialize a BirthdayBook entry objects, you will always pass as parameters the values to initialize for both the name and also the birthday. So we can say string name and also birthday and also birthday. So you should be quite familiar with such a routine already. So this name is assigned to the name, and also this birthday is assigned to birthday. And let's have some public accessors for these two private attributes. So we can say public and then string get name for the particular birthday book entry. So return the name of the context objects, right? And similarly, we should get another public accessor for the birthday. So public birthday, you can see it's a reference type return value. Get birthday over here, and then so here we can say return this dot birthday, right? Return the birthday of the context object using this. So I try to really use this whenever I can, even though it may not be so necessary because there's no variable shadowing over here. But I think it's actually nice because if I really need to trace my code, I will be very clear about which part should be replaced by the context objects as we trace in the previous tutorial videos. All right, so now we got birthday book entry. So this class, let me just mention that over here. So this class is only used for version 1, where ArrayList is used. Okay. However, for version number 2, in the next video, we actually see for hash table or for hash map, you just don't need the notion about entry explicitly because it's always defined for you. Okay, I will show you that. All right, let's now go back to, let me close these two classes. We don't need them anymore. Let's go back to version number 1. Okay. As I said, my assumption is you have already familiarized yourself about the basic methods, the common method like insertion, deletion, index off, and also how you can loop over an array list. So I can directly tell you what the solution might be. However, it's highly recommended that you actually go over the tutorial video that I just showed to you in the very beginning of the current video, and also to go over the relevant parts of your lecture. You should really study all these materials together. Otherwise, things wouldn't get connected and clicked. Okay. All right. So now we're just gonna define pretty much like how we define the like a facility class, or maybe for sorry, not facility, the member, how we define the member class back in week number 8, and we simply say in the class of member we got an array of facility. So now we just want to have an array of birthday book entry. Okay, but rather than an array, we just use ArrayList. Okay, so the greatest advantage is if you use the ArrayList library class, you don't need the extra integer counter anymore, like a number of entries. You don't need that anymore. Okay. However, for your test or for your labs, or whenever if you're constrained to really only use the primitive array, in that case you cannot use ArrayList. Of course, it depends on what you are constrained to program. All right, let's now do this. I'll say private attributes, and then I'm going to say the type, ArrayList. Okay, that's how you define that. As soon as you type this, you want to make sure you import the library class. Control space, and then you want to choose ArrayList from java.util, utility library, right? So now this is the so-called generic parameter. I wouldn't say too much in the tutorial. In the relevant lecture video, which I will include its link in the information section for this video, you can take a look for that particular part of the lecture. In that video, I explain about how you can instantiate the generic parameter. So now for generic parameter E, I will simply instantiate it by the type of every element in the array list. In this case, it should be a birthday book entry. Birthday book entry. And in this case, I don't need to import because they are in the same package, right? So now array list, and then that's only for me to declare the type. So this is the type of the private attributes. So it's going to be storing the address to the starting point of an array list, and then every element in the array list is a birthday book entry. Okay, and then I can say maybe list, or I can say birthday book is kind of up to me. But what about I say imp over here? So imp over here stands for implementation. And later on, when I go for version number 2, I'm also going to declare the same, like the attribute with the same name, also imp, but with a different type. Okay, so now in the constructor, we are going to initialize an empty birthday book. But now notice one thing. I don't really need any integer counter anymore. So notice that, right? No need to declare an integer counter to keep track of store entries anymore. In the case of the primitive array, you will need to define that integer counter. But for now, since we're using the API, somehow the counter has been incorporated in the methods already, so you don't need that. All right, so now how do we create an empty array list, right? According to what we learned from the lecture, and also for the extra tutorial video, this is how you can do it. You can say imp is assigned to, so new, using a new keyword for new objects. And now, if you control space, so you can see the code completion tells you can simply use the array list. So this is something interesting. Since I already declared the type to be birthday book entry over here, so Java compiler doesn't really require me to actually put birthday book entry again. Oh, sorry. So if I put it here, so I don't really need to put it over here. I don't need to. But if you want to, that's okay. But let me just get rid of it so that you can just get this neatest code possible. Right, and then you can see here we don't really pass any arguments into the constructor, so that will just initialize an empty array list internally because that's private. All right, so constructor is done. What about get a size? If you want to get a size for the birthday book, you just need to get the size of the internal. When I say internal, I really meant private. So to get the size of the birthday book, you just get the size of the internal list. Okay, so I can say return. So how do we get the size of the list, right? As we learn. So imp dot size. All right, you can see how easy it is, right? Of course, in the case of the primitive array, we'll simply return the value for the integer counter, right? Just try to compare the two possible implementation that you learned from week number 8. So now, how do we get a birthday of a particular person? Let's recall, in the case of the primitive array solution that we did in week number 8 tutorial, you will have to go over the array actually one by one and also try to compare the name against the current entry. So we will have to do something very similar over here, right? So here we have no shortcut, right? All right, so let's see how we can do it. Okay, let's now try to do this one here. It will be very similar. So I would say here, what about the birthday over here, the result, just to be null. Over here, eventually we want to return the result eventually. And so we want to seek for opportunity to really reassign the value of the result. If we never get a chance to reassign that, so that means the name does not exist, in which case we're going to return null. The same logic as what we did before. Okay, so now how do we go over the array list, right? If you go over the extra tutorial video, so there are two ways for you to do that. Let me show you the way that's very similar to how you did it for primitive array, just by going for indices. So there's another way by using the for each loop. You can definitely look at the extra tutorial videos, right? I'm gonna let you do that. So I can say for integer I initialized to be 0, I strictly less than. So now so we can say this imp the array list and then the size, right? So that'll be the upper bound for the loop counter and I++. And then we want to really get what would be the current birthday book entry. So you can say, let me just write it in several steps. So birthday book entry index, let's say E, index I. It would be basically this imp and then dot get, right? So that's another very common method from array list. So knowing the index, we can definitely get the corresponding store elements. So now the index will be just loop counter I, right? You can think about it's very similar to if I got my array and then I just want to get an index I, right? Very similar, right? If you think about array, is one of the is the primitive array attributes we store, like in week number 8 tutorial video. Okay, I'll just put it here just as a reminder. So this will be the current entry to look at. So that'll be E. So now we want to say if over here if E.get name, right? So entry we got actually remember every entry stores the name and also the birthday. But now we want to find a matching name. So what we can say is if the name from the entry dot equals, and every time you actually want to compare string values, always use dot equals. Okay, the name over here. Okay, if the name matches, so that means that will be the entry to return. So we can say result is simply assigned to E. Sorry, should be E. Oh, actually not E, because you can see E here is actually of type birthday book entry. So we cannot return the birthday book entry when we actually only expecting birthday. So what would you suggest? Well, E.get birthday. So that's how we get the birthday objects, right? All right, so hopefully it's not really too fast for you, but because it's really building on top what we have learned in the previous week for the OOP foundation. So, but I'm going to trace the code together with you as a final step for this version. Okay, how do we add a birthday? Basically, if you want to add a birthday basically entry, okay, how do we add it? So what you can do is you can say this dot. Let me write the neatest line to show to you. Just one line implementation. This dot imp dot. So now ArrayList, I can simply add to do add, and you can look at here. So now I can simply add it to the end. But here you can see the parameter here is a birthday book entry, right? How can I create a birthday book entry from the name and also birthday, right? Remember in the birthday book entry over here, in the birthday book entry, we actually got we can call this constructor by passing the name and also the birthday. So that's what we can do. Okay, just a quick reminder. So now I can simply use anonymous objects. So new birthday book entry, and then I can pass simply the name over here corresponding to the parameter name, and also birthday over here corresponding to the birthday parameter, right? So this will be a one-line implementation. Okay, if you wish, if that's actually too advanced for you, actually we spoke about anonymous objects already. So if you really want, you could have simply, I'll show you quickly. You can simply cut this line over here, and then you can say birthday book entry over here. Let's say E is assigned to basically this particular expression over here I just cut, right? And then you can say add E. That's what you can do. Okay, that will be version number 1 for you. Let me copy that, and then I will do version number 2. This dot imp dot add over here anonymous object, right? Both will work. You can choose which one you prefer. Okay, how do we remove a birthday? If you want to remove a birthday, I think it will be something very similar. We just want to find out where the birthday book entry is, and then we want to remove it. And remember, in the ArrayList class, we actually got a remove method. If we know which index to remove, we can simply use it. Okay. However, let me introduce a helper method right away. Right. Basically, for the remove birthday, it's going to be somehow very similar to the get birthday in the sense that we want to find the matching birthday book entry with the name that's matching the input name over here. Right. So why don't I introduce a helper method over here? Okay. So a helper method will simply calculate to see what will be the index of the birthday book entry in the array list that has the matching name. That's what we want to do. And then in both methods, both the get birthday and also the remove birthday, we can actually use the same helper method. You will see exactly how to do it. But feel free to actually try to code it up yourself, maybe with duplicates, and then you can try to see why the improved version with the helper method is actually better. Okay, let me introduce a helper method over here. I can say private. Okay, every time you want to do helper method that's only accessible within the current class, you can say private. Okay, let me maximize this. Okay, let me just do that. So now private, let's say it's going to return some integer for where the matching where the entry is that matches the input name. So I can say index of, right? And then I can say the string name. Okay, let me just document this. Return the index of birthday book entry whose name matches the input name. Right? You can see the input is also called name over here. All right, and return -1 if the name does not exist. Return -1 if the input name does not exist in the birthday book. For example, let's say we got Alan, Mark, and Tom, but we don't have Jeremy. In that case, we just return -1 index for Jeremy. All right. So now, how do we implement this? It will be very similar to the get birthday we just did. So let me just copy this one here. So let me just copy this particular part. Okay, I copy that. I will change accordingly. Okay. Apparently, we want to return the result. However, the result type is actually not right anymore because it should be some integer. So why don't I change this to be integer, and default value should be just -1. If I never get a chance to reassign result to be something other than -1, in that case, I would know the name does not exist. Okay. So everything here will be pretty much similar. You can see we still got a current entry to look at, and now result should be equal to whatever the I it is currently. Right? So that's the only difference. I'll let you study yourself carefully about why this method will work. Right? So let me say it again. Given the input name over here, and then we want to make sure that we return the index of the birthday book entry objects that's in the array list that actually has its name corresponding to or matching the input name over here. That's what we want to return. Okay, so that's why when the current entry has its name matching the input name, that's exactly what this line is about. And then we're going to assign the current array index or a loop counter into the result. When I say array, I meant array list, of course. Okay, let's see how we can apply this helper method in the two places. So we are really eliminating the code smell, meaning that we're eliminating duplicates in your code. Let's go back over here. So now what can we do? Okay, so now this part over here can be completely replaced by the index of, right? I can say integer index is assigned to this dot index of, right? The private helper method I just defined, and then just name. And over here I can even say I can say this. I can say if the index is larger than or equal to 0, so that means a valid index. That means the name actually exists. In that case, I can say, let me just put it here. Birthday book. Yeah, it's always good to have only a single return for your method. For those of you who might want to do multiple returns, go ahead. But I will highly recommend just a single return. Just make your code easier to read. So birthday book, let's say result, initially simply just null, right? The original line. Sorry, birthday only. Sorry, not birthday book. Sorry, just confused myself. Just birthday here. Okay, if index that's actually returned from this particular helper method is actually larger than or equal to 0, so that means the name actually exists in the birthday book. In that case, the result would just be equal to, so we can say this imp dot and then get, right? So now we know what the index is, and then so once we get it, this will be the type for this get will actually return a birthday book entry. And then we can say get a birthday from that particular birthday book entry, right? All right, and then we can do something very similar for the remove. So now we want to remove it. So now let's find out where it is. Integer index will be this index of and then the name, right? So now we want to say that if the index is actually larger than or equal to 0, which means we are removing some existing names corresponding entry, right? So now in that case, we can remove it. How do we remove it? We can call the relevant method. This imp, which is an array list, dot remove a particular index, right? So now it will just be index. All right. Exactly how the remove will actually work, I will try to visualize that quickly when I trace the code. However, for more complete introduction, you really want to review the lecture and also take a look at the extra tutorial video. All right, finally, we're going to look at the remind. So this one here is a little bit different. So we basically still want to go over entry by entry, and then we want to collect all the names whose birthday will actually match the input birthday. So that's what we want to do. And this one here will be very similar to the get points in Trojan 1 in your written notes, right? That's what we spoke about in week number 8. So we're going to do this maybe once more quickly as a review. So what we'll do is we're going to say string over here. Let's say it's not really a result. Let me say temp, okay, temporary array. And then the maximum number of names we can remind will be the entire birthday. So just a maximum. And then we're gonna create this will be intermediate array. We're gonna once we go over one pass over the birthday book to see which name should be collected, we'll create another array. That's pretty much what we study in the written notes. So we'll be new string array over here, and then we can say this dot imp dot size over here, and then we're gonna go over the array list for integer I initialized to be 0, I strictly less than, and then this dot imp dot size, right? Basically whatever you set used to be whatever that used to be the integer counter, you can now just use the size, right? He's gonna tell you exactly how many elements are there. And whenever you want to say the length or use the counter, you can also use the size, right? That's kind of the convenience of using a Java library. And then I++. Okay, let's go over that, and then we want to find out the matching one, right? So we can say if let me just without using an intermediate variable, let's now try to write some complex expression together with you. This imp.get loop counter value will be I, so this will give you a birthday book entry, and now we want to get a birthday, right? And get birthday. So we want to make sure this particular birthday has its month and day matching the birthday, right? The best way to do this will be to redefine the equals method in the birthday class. However, the equals method will only be spoken about in your second year. So this might be a little bit too advanced. So let me do it slightly verbose way. But in your second year, you can revisit this particular example about how to use the equals method. Okay, that's not something I will skip about the equals method. Okay, so I would suggest for this complex expression, I will simply say birthday, let's say BD, is assigned to this particular expression over here, right? And then we can say bd.get month is equal to the input birthday.get month, and also bd.get day equals. Well, I'm using equals because they're simply just integer primitive value, so I can use equals, and then birthday.get day. Okay, and then if they match, in that case, I know I need to collect this particular entry's name. So I can say temp is actually a temp. Oh, so I just need another counter, right? So the counter is actually for the temp, not for the array list, right? Just for the temp. So I can say integer count is assigned to 0, right? And here I can say add the value of count, very similar to what we did in the written notes, right? We just kind of combine the previous what you learned previously with the new library class ArrayList. It's assigned to so here should be BD. So here I should really get, oh, okay, I see. So BD is actually the birthday, but what we want to collect will be the name for the birthday book entry. So I can get, so this will be the birthday book entry over here, and then I can say this dot get name. All right, so you can study the details more carefully, right? Nothing's new. And then we can say count ++. All right. So after this, we cannot just return the temp right away because there might be fewer names than the size of the birthday book that should be collected to remind, right? There might be fewer. In that case, we have to make sure we return exactly the same size. So what we should do is we should just create another array. So that'll be the result. String result is new, and then string. So what should be the size? Well, exactly the count, what we have been keeping track of. Okay, eventually you want to return the result eventually, but now what should we do? We should just do another loop. Integer I initialize to be 0, I strictly less than result length, and then I++. What you can say also, rather than result length, you can say count. They are equal. Okay. And now let's do the copy. So you can say result index I is assigned to the temp array that we actually have been storing over here. So temp index I, right? Of course, I'm programming this under the assumption that we are actually not allowed to actually use any other library classes, any other library methods. If you really want to do just as a personal exercise beyond this course, you can look into how you can convert from ArrayList into array. So there is some way to do this. However, that will involve some typecasting from object array into string array, which I wouldn't so recommend to do it in this course. That might just confuse you. So that might simply just confuse you. So I would suggest I simply do something, maybe require maybe a little bit more lines of code. Not too bad, but at least you understand what you're doing. Okay, I would suggest. All right, I think I'm done with all the methods over here, right? Let's see if we will pass all the test cases. Let's see. Let me go back to the tests over here, test birthday book, and let me run it. Okay, I'm failing some assertion over here. Let's take a look very quickly. Okay, so if I click on the failure trace over here, it's actually at line. Let me just make this a little bit bigger. So line 29 over here. somehow the birthday over here is not right. So it's not really 10 and 15. Let me take a look very quickly. So let me now put a breakpoint over here. And then let me now use debugger. So it might be nice for us to review the debugging process very quickly. Okay, let me now simply switch to the debug mode. Okay, and then for this particular assertion, let's take a look. Jim birthday is actually, let's see here. Jim birthday is actually, day is 15 and the month is actually 10, right? Okay, and then get month is actually equal to, let me take a look very quickly over here about let's see this. If I go to expression over here, let me remove the previous one. Okay, let's take a look very quickly. Let's see this. If I say Jin birthday over here, as we can see for the attributes, month is actually 10 and the day is actually 5. Oh, it should be 15, right? I think I simply made a typo in the test case. My bad. All right, hopefully you're much more careful than I am. So maybe you have already spotted this mistake already. Good for you. So I think this one should just be 15. So nothing wrong in the code. As not yet. Okay. So since I know mistake, it's only that I just made a silly typo. Silly of me. So it should be 15 over here. All right. Let's now go back to Java perspective. Let's now run the test cases again. Okay. So now if I run it. Okay, we get a green bar. Okay, there was no mistake, sorry, in my model classes, right? So that was just this particular expected value over here should be 15 rather than 5. Okay, I made a mistake from the previous video. All right, so that's about the solution of version number 1 of using the array list. And then I would like to visualize the tracing of this this version number 1 very quickly with you on the iPad.